2024 has been a pivotal year for human rights worldwide, marked by persistent challenges and emerging crises. From armed conflicts to environmental catastrophes, the global community faces significant hurdles in protecting fundamental rights. Here are the top 10 human rights issues that have shaped the world. Number 10. Advances in artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has rapidly evolved, and its applications are increasingly pervasive, raising significant human rights concerns. AI technologies are utilized for surveillance, policing, and even in making critical decisions about people's lives. These applications often lack transparency and accountability, leading to potential abuses of power and discrimination. For instance, AI algorithms used in law enforcement can perpetuate racial biases, resulting in unfair treatment of minority communities. Moreover, AI-driven surveillance systems can infringe on privacy rights, with governments using them to monitor and suppress dissent. The challenge lies in ensuring that AI development and deployment adhere to ethical standards that respect human rights. Policymakers must establish regulations that prevent AI abuse and promote transparency and accountability in AI systems. Number 9. Refugee and migrant rights. The global refugee and migrant crisis continues to be a critical human rights issue in 2024. Conflicts, economic instability, and climate change have displaced millions of people, forcing them to seek refuge in other countries. However, host nations often fail to provide adequate protection and support, leading to dire conditions in refugee camps and perilous migration journeys. Refugees and migrants face numerous challenges, including xenophobia, legal barriers, and inadequate access to basic services like healthcare and education. For example, in Europe and North America, restrictive immigration policies have exacerbated the difficulties faced by asylum seekers, leaving them in limbo for extended periods. It is imperative for the international community to uphold the rights and dignity of refugees and migrants, ensuring they receive the protection and assistance they need. Number 8. Suppression of human rights defenders. Human rights defenders, including activists, journalists, and lawyers, are increasingly targeted worldwide. Governments and armed groups view these individuals as threats because they advocate for marginalized communities and expose injustices. This repression stifles civil society and undermines efforts to promote and protect human rights. In many countries, human rights defenders face harassment, arbitrary detention, and even violence. For instance, in countries like China and Russia, activists who challenge governmental policies or highlight abuses are often silenced through intimidation or imprisonment. The international community must support and protect human rights defenders, recognizing their crucial role in advancing human rights globally. Number 7. Gender-based violence and inequality. Gender-based violence remains a pervasive issue in 2024, with women and girls disproportionately affected. The rise in domestic violence, exacerbated by economic stress and societal pressures, underscores the need for stronger protections and support systems. Additionally, gender inequality in the workplace and societal roles continues to hinder progress towards true equality. Women and girls face various forms of violence, including physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. In many parts of the world, cultural norms and legal frameworks fail to protect them adequately. For example, in countries like India and South Africa, domestic violence rates have surged, and victims often lack access to justice and support services. Efforts to combat gender-based violence must include comprehensive legal reforms, education, and support systems for survivors. Number 6. Online harassment and disinformation. The digital age has introduced new challenges for human rights, particularly regarding online harassment, hate speech, and disinformation. Vulnerable groups, including minorities and women, are frequently targeted, leading to severe psychological and social consequences. The lack of adequate regulation and the delegation of oversight to private companies have created environments where abuse and misinformation thrive. Social media platforms and other online spaces have become breeding grounds for harassment and the spread of false information. This not only affects individuals, but also undermines public trust in institutions and democratic processes. For example, during the 2024 elections in several countries, disinformation campaigns were used to manipulate public opinion and suppress voter turnout. Addressing these issues requires comprehensive regulatory frameworks that ensure accountability and protect users from abuse. Number 5, climate change and environmental degradation. Climate change is one of the most pressing human rights issues of our time. The year 2023 was the hottest on record, leading to devastating environmental disasters such as wildfires, droughts, and storms. These events have displaced millions of people and destroyed livelihoods, particularly in vulnerable regions like Bangladesh, Libya, and Canada. Environmental degradation disproportionately affects marginalized communities who often lack the resources to recover from such disasters. For instance, indigenous communities in the Amazon rainforest face severe threats from deforestation and illegal mining activities. To protect human rights, it is essential to address climate change through sustainable policies and support for affected communities. Number 4, economic inequality and human rights. Economic inequality has reached unprecedented levels in 2024, exacerbating human rights violations. The global economic landscape is marked by stark disparities, with the wealthiest individuals and corporations accumulating vast resources while many people struggle to survive. This inequality is often driven by policies that favor the rich and neglect the needs of the poor. The COVID-19 pandemic has further highlighted these disparities as marginalized communities bear the brunt of economic hardships. For example, in countries like the United States and Brazil, economic inequality has led to higher rates of poverty, homelessness, and food insecurity. Addressing economic inequality requires comprehensive policy reforms that prioritize social justice and equitable distribution of resources. Number 3, the Sudan conflict. Sudan has been engulfed in a violent conflict since April 2023, with devastating consequences for its population. The power struggle between the country's two most powerful generals has led to widespread human rights abuses, including mass killings, sexual violence, and forced displacement. The conflict has particularly affected the Darfur region, where civilians continue to suffer from brutal attacks. The international community's response has been inadequate, failing to address the root causes of the conflict and provide sufficient humanitarian aid. For instance, the United Nations has struggled to mediate peace talks and secure safe access for aid organizations. A coordinated global effort is needed to end the violence and support the rebuilding of Sudanese society. Number 2, human rights violations in Xinjiang. The Chinese government's repression of Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims in Xinjiang remains a major human rights crisis. The mass detention of over 1 million individuals in so-called re-education camps, coupled with severe cultural persecution, amounts to crimes against humanity. Reports of forced labor, torture, and forced sterilizations have drawn international condemnation. Despite the evidence of these abuses, many countries have been reluctant to confront China due to economic and political interests. For example, Muslim-majority countries like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have largely remained silent on the issue, prioritizing their diplomatic and trade relations with China. It is crucial for the global community to hold China accountable and support the rights of the Uyghur people. Number 1, conflict and war crimes in Gaza. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has resulted in one of the most severe humanitarian crises of 2024. The Israeli government's blockade and bombardment of Gaza, including the use of white phosphorus, has been widely condemned as collective punishment and potential war crimes. Thousands of civilians, including children, have been killed and entire neighborhoods have been reduced to rubble. The international response has been mixed, with some governments condemning Hamas actions while being reserved about Israel's. This selective outrage undermines the universal principles of human rights and perpetuates the suffering of Palestinian civilians. A concerted effort is needed to achieve a lasting peace and ensure accountability for all parties involved in the conflict. That's all for today's video. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue to bring you important stories from around the world. See you in the next video.